Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to be showing you how to create a very basic Java-powered user interface design using a mixture of SceneBuilder and JetBrains IntelliJ software that you can download for free, and the links in the description below. So once you do download and install those applications, the first thing you're going to want to do is create a brand new project in IntelliJ. This is going to be our actual program where all the coding is done. I'm just naming the application Puppy, but you can name it whatever you'd like. Just do keep in mind that title case is very important when it comes to naming conventions with Java. Once you create your JavaFX application, you'll see several new tabs in the tab bar. The main files we'll be focusing on in this video are the Hello application and the Hello controller files. And with any application, what I always like to do first is declare an X and Y variable so we can move our window around and always know where it's at. We can store the position, X and Y position of our window using those variables. I work on a multi-monitor kind of setup, so it's really important to kind of always make sure your window, your application is centered where you want it. And then down here in the set title, we can set the window title. And if we go ahead and run the program, if I can spell, we'll get that updated title. But we really won't need to worry about this line of code here, because we're going to be making our own user interface design, which will override that title bar anyways with the following line of code. So in order to remove the standard or default title bar in your Java application, all you need to do is add this line of code here, init style, stage style, and then just set it to transparent, which will get rid of our title bar. And you'll notice when you now run the program, there's no title bar, and you have really no way of closing or minimizing the application. That is okay, because that is what this video is all about. And now we can go ahead and switch over to the SceneBuilder application you downloaded earlier. Go ahead and open that, create a new file where the extension will be .fxml. With almost any JavaFX application, I always like to start with a border pane. So go ahead and drag and drop that into your blank canvas, then we can reset the size of our application window. And once you do that, the next step is to head back over into IntelliJ really quickly and create a new directory inside of your resources folder, which we will use to store all of our CSS code. I'm going to name my folder CSS, and I will title that new file style.css. I did have to restart my computer between those last steps, so if you do have any questions on getting the CSS file loaded into SceneBuilder, do let me know in the comments down below. If you want to skip this step, you can use the same styles inline using SceneBuilder's style options in the right-hand column of the application. You'll notice that the first thing I do is give the border pane a CSS class and a background color property. I'm trying to replicate the Mac OS user interface design, but you can style your application however. And almost instantly after adding those new styles, they refresh in our SceneBuilder app, which is super handy. Now we can go ahead and add a few more styles, such as those nice rounded corners that Mac uses, using the CSS FX property background radius. We'll give it 12 pixels. You'll also notice that our code is slightly different than the traditional CSS. The FXML files use FX CSS properties, which are slightly different than your standard CSS, but if you are using IntelliJ or Eclipse, the autocomplete is super helpful in finding those properties that you're used to. Now that we have those rounded corners, we can start building our custom title bar. I just want to readjust the size of our window first using the built-in layout options inside of SceneBuilder. Before we go any further, I do want to pull up the UI design sheet I found on Figma for Mac OS, the latest update, which I will share in the description below. We can use Figma's inspect feature to copy the CSS styles such as fonts, colors, borders, etc. So right now I'm just grabbing the background color for our title bar, then we can come back and get the colors of those buttons. So once you get the styles of your title bar and window set, the next thing we need to do is create our buttons so the user can close and minimize the application. The app I am designing will not be resizable, so instead of the green traffic button, we're going to use the disabled gray one. And here we have Photoshop. I am just going to create a new file, 12 by 12 pixels. You're welcome to use any photo editor tool, by the way, that you would like, since I know Photoshop can get a little bit pricey with their new subscription-based model. You can even use Microsoft Paint if you'd like, but all we're really doing is making a few colored circles. So let's zoom way in since it's only 12 pixels, and we'll grab our ellipse tool. We'll drag it over our canvas, and then just fill it with those three colors: red, yellow, and gray. So go ahead and do that, and once we do that, we will get our buttons loaded into SceneBuilder. Oh, and I'm just saving each of these files as PNGs inside of our resources directory, where I made a new folder titled IMG, which will store all of our photo assets. Now we can come back into SceneBuilder and start putting together our new title bar. I think what's gonna work best is a flow pane with an H box or a horizontal box inside, and that will house our title button, our title bar buttons. So go ahead and drag and drop a flow pane and H box respectively into your anchor or border pane. And once we do that, we can now add those images we just saved in Photoshop into the new H box. But before we add the image views, we'll add 3 new buttons, since SceneBuilder lets you place images inside of buttons. We can then remove the text and background from these buttons, and now we have custom buttons. Once you do that, I'm not going to be showing it in this video, but you can use the hover and press pseudo properties in CSS, etc. to add hover pressed effects and what have you for your new custom buttons. So now we just need to resize those buttons down to 12 by 12 pixels, and then we can load those images into, using the properties panel inside of SceneBuilder. Alternatively, you're welcome to load these images using CSS, but I personally like SceneBuilder's easy to use features. So yeah, we will load those one by one, and then we're gonna resize those, delete the background, and delete the text. Once you're finished perfecting your title bar buttons, we can then go ahead and drop a label onto our flow pane. Since I am on a PC, I don't have the SF Pro text that Mac OS uses for their title bars, but I do have the SF Pro display font, so I'm going to use that to best replicate the Mac OS UI design. And we'll just do a brief time lapse here, skipping over removing the background of those buttons, which I did using CSS, just by using a simple background color property, and I set it to transparent. And then I'm just gonna kind of reposition those, move them around a little bit to make them where they're supposed to be. And then don't forget to change the color of our title bar. It looks like we haven't done that yet. So I will do that now using, we'll just add a new class and use CSS to do that. So let's make it a dark gray, darker than our background. And there we have it. Oh, and don't forget to add that label onto your flow pane. You don't really need to give it a custom title or anything, since we can do all that programmatically. Just make sure it is centered the best you can on your title bar. We can use some simple math. If the window is 900 pixels wide and all 3 buttons are about 78 pixels wide, we can subtract 78 from 900 divided by 2, and you get roughly half of that second portion of the flow pane. It's the layout is weird, I know, but it's hard to center 2 things inside of one. So we'll go ahead and finish adding the CSS properties for our text label. Oh, and don't forget to change the colors, since you can't really see that. And we're just gonna add a CSS ID rather than a CSS class, because then we can add paragraph text CSS classes later on that we can just refer to using those IDs. And if you want to change the opacity of your text or really anything in JavaFX applications, a really fun trick I learned in IntelliJ is you can right click on any color code and click convert to RGB, CYMK, etc. And then just by adding an A at the end of RGB and adding one more parameter inside of your CSS class, that will change the alpha or opacity. So we'll set that to 60% so it's not as bright, and then we can fix the margins and paddings, and as I was saying earlier, we can center that label. And I'm just going to do a really quick time lapse while I struggle to reposition this label to the center of our window. Just by playing around with the margins and paddings of the H-box and the flow pane, we can correctly reposition that, if you will. And once we do that, we're going to head back into our IntelliJ application, and now we can link the hello controller to our new main FXML file. And we will change the default generic file names in a moment, but let's get the controller in first. So what that means is we're basically just we have a file full of code that controls our window we just designed. So we need to specify that in our FXML file. So this is basically exactly what we designed, but represented using code. So inside the code, all we have to do is link the controller, and then we can switch this FXML file in our main class to main.fxml. So now when we run it, we should see our window. There we have it. We do need to do a couple of things. Right off the bat, I recognize that, yeah, we need to reset the width and height, and we also need to get rid of the white background color because we want those transparent rounded corners. So I think we made this 900 by 500, and then if we run it again, we'll get our correct dimensions. There we go. Perfect. So we have the custom title bar. It doesn't do anything yet. We haven't told it to do anything yet, so we have to manually close the application in the meantime. But what we're going to do is hop back over into SceneBuilder, and we're going to give our buttons some IDs. But we don't want to do FX IDs. We're just going to make those buttons an action event. So instead of FX ID in SceneBuilder, you will do on action. So that means anytime any interaction happens with that button, if they click it, if they press it, if you know they're tabbed on it and hit the space bar or enter key on it, it's going to close your application. So, and that's what we want because it's a close button. So in the on action, we'll just call it close, and we'll do the same thing for our other two. And of course, the disabled, we don't really need to do anything with the disabled. We might add a CSS hover property later, but the disabled button is just that. It doesn't do anything. So yeah, we'll skip over just naming these real quickly. And then another really useful feature inside of SceneBuilder is if you go up to View and select Show Skeleton Controller, this will show you what your controller class should look like given your current FXML design. I don't copy and paste the entire code since IntelliJ likes to do this weird encapsulation or sort of pasting of a class inside of another class, so I just copy and paste the guts, if you will. And as I said earlier, we do want to rename these default file names. So I'm just going to come down, right click, and refactor, rename, and then rename it to whatever you want. The refactor feature is a really cool IntelliJ feature where basically it'll search your entire program, every single file inside of your program, the libraries, etc. And it'll make sure that renaming that file name isn't, the file isn't going to screw anything up later on down the road. Because if you rename something, obviously you're gonna want to rename it everywhere. So once we do that, we're now inside of our main controller. It used to be the hello controller, but we can copy those innards and import our classes, like the action event classes and then we will implement the initializable method. And now that's basically it. We have a controller now. So with this, we can programmatically kind of tell our window what to do. And in this video, we're only concerned about those close and minimize buttons, and then being able to kind of drag the bar. So let's just make sure we name these correctly, since we did rename the file. And then when we run it, we should still have the same window. Perfect. And nothing works still, because we haven't really done anything yet. We jumped back into SceneBuilder, gave everything names, and then we copied and pasted the skeleton. But now we need to actually write some code. So the first thing we want to do is the user needs to close the window. So inside of our close method, we're going to create a new object stage and event get source, get class. I'm sorry, get stage. Okay, I think I have a parentheses in the wrong spot, maybe. Basically, all we're doing here is we're getting the stage window, the current stage. And now what we can do is stage close. So anytime the user presses the close button, what happens is it closes the window that's currently open, and that's the code we just wrote. Really simple. I'm not going to explain what each kind of function or method does, but now, yeah, the disable we don't need to do anything, so we can just remove this later. Or you know what? I think I'm just gonna delete it now. So let's move. Yeah, so let's move on to our minimize button. Let me make sure I can disable it. And yeah, my OCD wants to reposition this label a little bit more. So. Anyways, we came back into SceneBuilder to get rid of the FX ID on the drag button. The disable button. We don't need it. It doesn't do anything. It's just a waste of code. So now let's write the method for our minimize function, or minimize method. So we'll do the same thing. We'll get the current window. We'll cast that stage. We'll cast Sorry, it's a new keyboard, so I'm still getting used to the arrows and the Logitech MX. And then now all we have to do is there's a method set iconified that basically just turns our entire application into an icon in our taskbar, like so. In the next step, we'll actually in this video we're going to show you how to change the taskbar icon. So we'll do that next, I think. Yeah, so now our window closes and minimizes. And the next thing we want to do is hop back over into SceneBuilder. And we just want to give our flow pane a dragged and pressed ID. But I'm trying to remember how. So instead of making the FX ID, same with the close, we're actually going to drop down to the mouse event. And SceneBuilder has all these options on mouse, on keyboard event, basically all of the handlers. So we'll scroll down to on mouse dragged and on mouse pressed. Whoops. And we'll name the dragged, dragged, and pressed, pressed. And we'll just view the skeleton controller real quick, make sure that looks good. Perfect. And we can just copy and paste it into our code where we have those other events. So let me get rid of that. Just making sure everything looks good. We don't want our program to crash. Drag, save, and good to go. Okay, so let's copy that code into here. Void, I think we need to drag. I'm sorry, mouse event. And I'm gonna wrap up this video here momentarily. I have to get some sleep at some point. And we'll do the same thing. We'll call the window. But and now when the user drags that window, we'll change the position of the X and Y, given wherever the mouse is. To the top of our controller and we'll just initialize or declare X and Y variables as doubles, which is our X and Y position of our scene. So now we can do the same exact thing with our pressed method, because our drag method won't work without our pressed method. We have to know when the user presses the title bar. We have to also be able to drag the window with it. So to do that, we'll just do x equals event get scene x and y equals event get scene y. So the press method will get the x and y position of our window based on wherever the user clicks. So let's try running that, see what happens. I forgot a semicolon. Let's try that again. And it kind of works. I think it's a weird... There's nothing wrong with our code, I don't believe. I think that might be a graphical issue. And I just need to update my GPU drivers. Yeah, because the code looks okay. But that's how you create a custom pressed and dragged event for your custom title bar. So let's rerun this, see if that bug goes away. I mean, it's working. It looks like it's glitching out, but on my screen, the frames are much higher, so you can actually see the window dragging. It's like back in the day when you drag the task manager and it creates multiple instances of the task manager behind it. That's kind of what it's looking like. You just can't see it because the frame rate's so high on my monitor versus the recording. So anyways, that is that. Other than that, the last thing I want to do is just briefly, really quickly show you how to change the icon of your application in the taskbar. So let's do that real quick, and then we'll call it a wrap. Okay, so to make the custom taskbar icon of your application, I'm gonna just hop back into Photoshop, make a 512 by 512 square canvas, and I do have a picture already I think would work well. It's this puppy safari. I'm making like a text-based adventure game. So what the UI design is that I'm actually making in this video is it's gonna kind of replicate the Mac OS command prompt or the terminal application. So we will save this as a PNG. We'll make sure we put it in the correct directory where we're storing those other images of our application. inside the IMG folder. Alright, save. And now we can hop back into IntelliJ, our main class. We're just going to add one line of code, and all we're going to do is set the icon of our application. So to do that, and this might not work on Mac, I was having issues with this line of code on different operating systems, but we're just going to do stage dot, and don't worry about them, you don't need to do the main primary. I will eventually delete that code, but the code you need to be worried about is, instead of main.primary, it would be stage.getIcons.add new image objects require non-null, which means your program's not going to run if the icon's not where it's supposed to be. And we'll just call that location, and if we run it, let me look here, give me 1 second. Yeah, so the way we have it set up right now is going to cause us some problems. So I'm just gonna remove line 14 there, public static, and just do stage instead of main.primary. I don't know why I had this set up the way I did, but ignore the code, or better yet, remove the code, and we should be okay. So yeah, I'm just gonna delete this, gonna delete that, and then switch all these back to stage, which is what it should have been initially. I don't know what I was doing. Just select all these at the same time. There we go. Perfect. And that is that. And now if we run the program, we have a custom title bar and a custom taskbar application icon. In the next video, I will be showing you some more user interface SceneBuilder designs. We're going to add a text box, a couple of input boxes, some more graphics, icons, etc. So stay tuned, and thanks for sticking around, and hope to see you in the next one.